I contacted several auction houses and high-end collectors and asked them what the 5 most expensive sports cards in the world would sell for right now. Up first, we have Marshall Fogel's PSA 10 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle. This might be the most expensive card of the crew. He paid $150,000 for this back in the 90s, and I actually have a clip of him talking about how he didn't tell his wife about the purchase at the time. But before I go there, I'm going to tell you what the auction houses thought that this would sell for. So the highest one was $75 million. Again, these are high-end collectors and actual auction houses that I pulled. The lowest was $20 million, and the average was right around $25 million, which I personally think that is what it would sell for. This is the best of the best. It's the best of the 3 PSA 10 Mickey Mantles. Just an amazing card. Marshall's invited me and LZ out to see it, so we're going to try to make that happen soon. This really is probably the most expensive card in the world right now. Some of the other ones I'm going to show on the list could give it a run for its money, but I think this one, push comes to shove, would go for the highest price. Here's that clip again of Marshall telling us that he never told his wife about purchasing the Mickey Mantle card.
I assume even like back when you bought this card, it was an expensive card to purchase, I'm sure, at the time. How did your family feel about you investing in that particular card and making an investment like that?
The answer is simple. I didn't tell them. They didn't know. I've been a lawyer too long to not figure that one out, so it got to be a secret for quite a while. But over time, I became a hero in my family for the card.
All right, next up we have the PSA 10 Mantle from the Diamondbacks collection. This belongs to Kendrick, and it's part of his it's like $50 to $100 million collection in general of just sports cards. The funniest thing about this to me is that he's gone on record in saying that he hates the Yankees. He hated them growing up. So it's ironic that now he has one of the 3 best Mickey Mantle cards in existence. But anyway, he's the owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks and obviously a huge super collector, big whale. And this is his feature card. The range was pretty wild on this one. We had, again, $75 million at the top. We had $18 million, $15 million at the bottom. Somebody said $30 million. Somebody said 45, 25. It seems like the average is about the same as Marshall Fogel's. It's just slightly lower at $22 million. All right, next up is a controversial card. This is known as the Gretzky Wagner, and it's because he co-owned it with an investor for a while. And this is the finest known example of a Honus Wagner card, and the story's pretty funny. The reason it's controversial is back in the 80s, there was some question as to how this looked so nice and if it really was truly a mint card. The FBI actually got involved in this. They did a whole investigation. They concluded it may have been cut or trimmed 1/16 of an inch, but they had no proof. And without proof, the card remains valuable. So I polled everyone on this card, and it actually ended up higher than both of the 1952 Mantles. Again, it had a pretty wide spread. We had $100 million, $30 million, $25 million, $50 million, $20 million, $20 million, $30 million, and then somebody was like $2.5 million. The average, and I have a few more responses, but the average is probably about $30 million on that. So this one takes the cake over the 2 Mantles in terms of expected sale price. All right, this card's got a cool backstory. This is the 1914 Babe Ruth. It's the first time he ever appeared on a sports card, so you can obviously understand its importance. This has already sold for $7.2 million at auction. The provenance is pretty cool. I mean, it was collected by a newspaper boy back in the day, along with 14 other known examples. I believe this is the 2nd highest in the pop. Probably should have gone with the highest, but I wanted to kind of get some diversity in these cards a little bit in terms of the prices. So the range on this one was much lower. We had 4 million, 7 million, 5 million, and 5 million, and a couple others. Given that it sold for 7.2, it seems like the average is 5, but I personally think that's crazy. I think this sells for $10 million if it comes up on auction right now, but I could be wrong. We shall see. All right, this is an SGC 9.5 Mantle. As we all know, PSA does not have a 9.5 grade, but SGC does, which is great, especially for this card. One of the best mantles in existence. And actually, this is a question for you guys. I'm not a huge baseball guy. Do you think that this particular card could get a PSA 10? That's a big question for me, because based on the values I got on this, guessing if it could pull that off would increase the value significantly. So let me know in the comments if you think this would qualify for PSA 10. That would be interesting. So this has got a wild story behind it. This is part of the Rosen find. Marshall Fogel, referred to Al Rosen as Mr. Mint because everything he touched turned to mint. But I think it was like 1986. It's actually near where I live in Quincy, Massachusetts. He got word. It was basically a tip about a truck driver who had a large stash of 1952 Topps baseball cards. And after a ton of phone calls back and forth and negotiations, Al Rosen just headed up and gambled and bought the entire collection. And I mean, we're talking like, I think there was 30 1952 Topps mantles, several unopened packs and cases and all kinds of stuff. Obviously, looking back now, that's like the most amazing find ever. And to be honest, this right here, like that example right here, is the number one reason I am in the hobby. I'm always in it for the treasure hunt. Like finding a signed 86 Fleer Jordan in the wild for $8,500, slabbing it and making a ton of money that way. The treasure hunt is what has always kept me in this, and I know there's an addict find like this out there somewhere, and I don't know. It's awesome. I'm jealous of Al Rosen, but anyway, he found like all these cards in a case, and they were in like amazing condition, and all of the pristine mantles you see out there can really trace their lineage to this find, including this one. So obviously the purchase ended up being amazing, and he sold the cards, made a ton of money, and he's a legend. Even the box that these cards were held in were bought by the Dave and Adams CEO who had put on display at one of the Nationals recently. So I asked around about this card, and the quotes were funny. One auction house said more than Fogel's, which I was like, wow, that's interesting. Does it look better? 15 million, 25, we got a 10, another 10, a 10, a 19, and some other responses. It seems like this one's topping out at about an $18 million average. But again, the question is, could this get a PSA 10? That is the probably $7 million question. So we'll be curious, but I think 18 feels about right. I feel like it's slightly less valuable than Marshall's, just because it's a 9.5, even though it might look the same. But I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong. I think I got the top 5 most expensive cards in the world here. We're talking a ton of money on these. I've tried to cast a pretty wide net in terms of who I asked, but please let me know in the comments, number 1, if I missed any. What cards did I not think about? I'm sure there's something out there that I missed. And number 2, let me know if you agree with these values or not. Hopefully it was helpful. I thought it was kind of cool to talk to people about what some of the most awesome cards in the world would sell for, especially since we interviewed Marshall Fogel on the show, and I'll include those links in the description to the 3-part interview. It was pretty awesome. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to drop random things like this all the time. The only way you're going to get them is to hit that notification button. Thanks again, everyone.